everybody. How are we?
Good.
Such a beautiful day. Like, not that I wish for rain and clouds, but sometimes we get a better turnout when the weather's not as glorious as it is today. So thank you all for being here. Really appreciate your presence. Do you feel like I need the mic, or do you feel like you can hear me as is? The mic's a little loud tonight, so I want to blast you out here. So if this works for you, then great. So my name is Kendra Cantrell. I'm the Director of Guidance here at Tantascwa, and I'm very thankful to see you all here. As I said tonight, I even see a few students, so you guys are good soldiers to come. You were here yesterday to get this presentation. You're back again tonight to get the double dose, so that's great to see. Tonight we're going to really be talking about the nuts and bolts of the college application process. What does a college application entail? Kind of what your students should have already been working on over the summer. When we met with them in June, we gave them a laundry list of things they needed to be working on with a packet of information. Hopefully your children were busy and productive over the summer. We're also going to be talking about testing, essays, letters of recommendation, all those different components that you might be wondering about and worrying about for your own child. And then I'll be taking any questions, of course, if there's anything that's unclear to you. This kind of is like a part two, so to speak, of the college admissions process. I give a presentation in January for juniors and parents of juniors to talk about kind of the broad overview of the college process. So hopefully you were able to join us for that back in January. And now this really gets into kind of the nitty-gritty details of everything that your student's going to be experiencing and working on, and you're going to be working on with them, I'm sure, over the next few months. So again, please stop me if you have any questions throughout the presentation. I'm happy to answer those. So as I said, yesterday we had a senior assembly. And at this senior assembly, we held 3 focus groups. So one focus group was for students interested in attending a 4-year college directly from high school. The second focus group was students planning on attending a 2-year college directly from high school. And then the third focus group was the work, military, career, and technical school group. So we tried to tailor these presentations to whatever your child felt like they were going to be kind of joining into after they graduated. The students who attended the 4-year presentation yesterday received this packet. It is a very important packet. I hope they all have it at home or have it in their backpacks. You can look for this bright orange paper and you can ask your child, where's that wonderful packet Mrs. Cantrell gave you yesterday? Because they were all given one. And inside this packet, there's a lot of fantastic and helpful information for you and for your student. Some of the things that are in here, just to give you a sense of things, just our school information. There's a college planning timeline, month by month, of everything that they should be doing to stay on track. There's our college entrance testing schedule, so when is SAT registration, when is ACT registration, when are the testing dates. That's a really helpful document to make sure your child stays on task. The admission standards for Massachusetts public universities, so if they're thinking about Westfield State, Worcester State, UMass Amherst, kind of what it would take to get into that college. It also talks about scholarships. It gives a list of websites that are really helpful. It gives some essay tips on how to write a fantastic essay, and even a college visit checklist. So when they go and visit schools, they can see exactly kind of what they should be asking and what they should be looking for when they go and visit a campus, and try to make sure that they really understand, what that campus has to offer for them, and to make that great decision. And at the end of the packet, I have all the PowerPoint slides for the presentation I gave yesterday, so they can follow along with everything that we talked about and hopefully not have too many questions. Additionally, the PowerPoint that I'm going to show you tonight is on the website, on our guidance website. So if you go on to the Tantascwa website, click on guidance on the left-hand side, you'll see it says Senior Focus Group 4-Year College Presentation, and that's everything you're going to see here tonight, so you can access it later on if you have questions. All right, so without further ado, we'll get started. So we have a great, wonderful, amazing staff here, and while other schools are cutting their guidance departments, we have not had to do that, and that's because the school believes that what we do is important and valuable. So we have a very wonderfully staffed and fully staffed guidance department. As you can see, we have some academic school counselors, and we also have Mrs. O'Neill, who handles the technical division. So all of our contact information is on the website. You can email us, you can call us. I have my business cards up here at the front if you want to contact me for any reason, so we're all available to you. So post-secondary options. So typically at Tantascwa, 8 out of 10 students head off to some kind of post-secondary work, whether that is a 2-year college or a 4-year college or some kind of career and technical certificate program. We don't really talk too much tonight about the 2-year process because it's quite simple. Typically the 2-year colleges are looking for 2 things, the application and a transcript, and that's it. There's not that much else involved, which is great. There's no testing, no SAT tests required, no ACT tests, there's no letters of recommendation required. It really is a transcript and an application. So there's not too much to go into about the 2-year process. The other nice thing though about the 2-year process is that we have a wonderful relationship with Quinsigamond Community College in Worcester and in Southbridge. And what we've arranged with them for the past few years is for them to come in and do an instant decision day. So this is a great opportunity for students who are thinking they want to start at a 2-year school. And they can book an appointment with the representatives on those days, come down, they look at their transcript, they talk to the student a little bit, and they're conditionally accepted on the spot. So it's nice, it's quick, it's easy, and the application is free if they do it through the instant decision day process. So that saves them a few dollars as well. So that's a wonderful opportunity, and I always encourage all the students thinking about the 2-year option to take part in that because it's great. But the 4-year process, far more complex, and that's why we're here today. So here's what a typical college application will include. It will include first and foremost testing scores. That would be SATs with writing, the SAT subjects sometimes, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a minute, and the ACTs. The next piece of the puzzle is the application. So there's either the use of the specific college's application. So let's say you're applying to, I don't know, Anna Maria. Let's say you wanted to do the Anna Maria College application. That's what I would be referring to. But there's also something called the Common Application. Is anyone here familiar with the Common Application? So the Common Application is a consortium of about 500 colleges that have all decided to use one specific application called the Common Application. And so the nice thing about the Common Application is that a student could apply theoretically to as many schools on that list as they want and only have to fill out that application once. So it does save a great deal of time if your student is looking to apply to a lot of schools on the Common Application list. The Common Application is a little bit of a bear itself. It's long, it's cumbersome, but the value is in the fact that you don't have to do, let's say, 10 applications to apply to all these schools. If they're all on the Common App, you just do it once. So that's a nice time saver for students. The other piece of the college application packet is an essay and possibly a supplement. Now the essay is typically 500 to 600 words. It's kind of the more hefty writing sample that your child is going to give to the college. And it's going to be based on a certain prompt or something, a question that is posed to your child, or maybe a few options of questions that are posed. The Common Application, for example, gives 5 choices every year. So a student could write one of those 5 choices. Sometimes they're, when did you transition to adulthood? Or is there a time when you challenge the status quo? So the kind of broad questions that a lot of kids could write a lot about. In addition to the larger essay, sometimes colleges are looking for something called supplements. Supplements are between 1 to 250 words, and they're typically more school specific. So it might be that your child is writing one big essay and then also having to write a few other supplements for some colleges, even if they're Common App schools. So you would write your one big Common Application essay, and then you might have a supplement for this college, and then another supplement for this other college. And sometimes it might be like, well, why do you see yourself at Champlain College? Or what could you bring to Nichols College? Or how do you see yourself contributing to the community of WPI? So that's kind of the supplement piece that sometimes goes in addition to the bigger essay. Not all colleges have supplements, but some do. The next piece of the puzzle is the letters of recommendation. Students are going to be getting letters typically from 2 teachers and their guidance counselor. Now, they don't need to ask us as guidance counselors to write their letter. We are already planning to write a letter for every child who asks us and is planning on heading off to a 4-year school. But teachers, they do need to figure out which 2 teachers that they've had over the course of their 4 years they would like to have write about them. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit as well. The last thing is the high school transcript and the schedule of courses for senior year. So the transcript is essentially all of the courses and grades that a child has taken from 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. That's the transcript that gets sent to the colleges. We also send a schedule of senior year courses because the colleges want to know that your child has challenged themselves and not taken, underwater basket weaving 1, 2, and 3 in senior year. They want them to really be pushing themselves. Gone are the days of an easy senior year with study halls and kind of lighter courses. We really have been pushing your seniors to take rigorous courses, to challenge themselves with honors or APs if possible, and to really make sure that the senior year is a continuation of the rigorous junior year that they've taken. You don't want to have a light senior year. That never looks great to a college. So these are all the different pieces of the college application, and we're going to talk in depth more about all of these different pieces. Any questions thus far? Okay. So first is testing, the least favorite thing, I would say, of most people. So every child who is planning on attending a 4-year college should have already taken the SATs either in May or June of last year, of their junior year. We had talked about that with them in January. We talked about that with them in all of the individual meetings, course selection. We hammered that home that they should have taken it at least once in May or June. This is to get a baseline score and to see how they can kind of improve as they take the test again in their senior year. So there's the first test that kind of everybody knows around here is the SAT reasoning. This has critical reading, math, and writing. And the recommendation is to take that test 2 to 3 times. So once in May or June of junior year, and then 1 to 2 more times October, November, December of senior year. This is kind of the next time when we're hoping that they'll test. The reason we say 2 to 3 times is because the first time usually is overwhelming. It's the first time they've had to take a timed, standardized test. They're not used to kind of being asked to do all of this work in a very, very short amount of time. They have to move quite quickly. The second time really is hope that you'll kind of have a more familiarity with the test and the format and what's being asked of you. And perhaps you've also done some SAT prep between the first time you took it and the second time you took it. That's the other hope that we've talked to about with your students. There's a ton of great free resources online. If anyone has heard of Khan Academy, K-H-A-N, Khan Academy, they have partnered with the College Board who runs the SAT, and they offer free, personalized SAT prep programs for your child based on how they did on the SAT and even the PSAT. So it will find their weaknesses and it will strengthen those through a targeted program just for them. So if your students are not on Khan Academy working through some of those prep programs, you have something to tell them to do tonight, right? You can give them a little incentive to get going. So again, we hope that your child took them in May or June, and we now hope that they'll also be signing up to take it again October, November, or December of senior year. The subject tests are a little different. These are 1-hour tests in one content area. So perhaps it's math, or perhaps it's chemistry or biology. These tests are typically not needed by most students applying to 4-year colleges. The students who are applying to the most selective of schools, MIT, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Northeastern, you may see some of those colleges requiring subject tests based on what major your child might be interested in. But the majority of children will not have to worry about an SAT subject test. Okay? The other type of standardized test there is out there is the ACT. Now the ACT was created out in Iowa, so if you went out to Iowa, everybody's taking the ACT and no one's taking the SATs, because the SAT was a New Jersey creation. So we kind of know the SAT in the Midwest and the West, sometimes knows the ACT a bit more. The ACT is not offered here at Tantascwa, but it is offered at a few schools locally. Worcester, Munson typically run the ACTs pretty regularly. Now, there's a benefit perhaps for some students to take the ACTs either in addition to the SAT or instead. The ACT is a little bit more user-friendly. It's a little bit less about those archaic words that no one kind of knows the context of anymore. It also has a science and technology component, so if your child is really strong in the sciences, that could be a useful test for them to take. Sometimes we say to a student, take the SAT, take the ACT, let's compare scores. You're going to send the higher one off to the colleges, but it does allow your child to have another opportunity to kind of show their strengths on a standardized test. Every college will take either one. I've never heard of a college saying, nope, we only take the ACT or we only take the SAT. They're interchangeable in the eyes of the college. So if your child wants to take the ACTs, I would encourage them to sign up as well. That's a great idea too. Any questions on testing so far?
So when would you go to ACT? That's what it wants.
Yes, so you go on to the, I'll show you on the next slide.
Munson does a great job.
So if you go to
They have that plot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. See, that's right. October 28th, here it is.
Six schools are.
Yep, that's right. So the ACT and the SAT are offered the same dates across the country. So we only offer the SAT here, but there's other schools obviously that offer the ACT. So as you can see, here's the upcoming dates. We have the October 7th test. There is still late registration available until the 27th. There are spots available here as well. I can tell you the last time I checked with our SAT coordinator. So kids can still get in and take the test in October. There's also a November 4th date, a December 2nd date, and then it starts up again in March. So the reason we really encourage your children to take it earlier is because if they're applying to schools, November, December, January, February, these are really the 3 test administrations that will be needed. Anything else would be too late for the college application process. And also ACT. So this is offered October 28th. That deadline's coming up, and December 9th. And you can visit actstudent.org to register. All the test locations will pop up, and you can decide which one you want to attend. Okay? So sometimes the students, yes, sir.
All this is in the packet, right?
It's all in the packet. Yes, it is. Yep, it's all in the packet. Absolutely. We offer a boot camp for juniors to prepare for the May and June tests, and then beyond that, we really hope that they're accessing Khan Academy to kind of keep working through those materials. It's such a great personalized free program. It's hard to beat.
Yeah, the seniors at this point should really do Khan Academy. We started that free program for juniors a few years ago.
Right.
So families and kids would have that option. But at this point, as Kendra said, if you're really trying to get after the SAT or ACT, Khan Academy is outstanding. Free videos, free interactive stuff. We do daily things, weekly assignments, practice exams, all kinds of
Yep.
stuff.
So what my question is with this is, I don't think, well, okay, so what I've heard is that with SATs, if your kid does fairly well, then have them take ACTs and see how they do there. And
Yep.
then also, I mean, does it make sense to wait to see which school she wants, do you know what I mean, that they want to go to? Because
I think you're better off being safe by taking both. We have a lot of kids that will take the SAT in the spring, and if they do great, they will take the ACT in the fall. Most kids that take the ACT from here probably are taking it because they didn't do so hot in the SAT. So it really depends on the schools you're applying to. Hopefully your child has narrowed it down even to like 15 or 20 schools that they're interested in, and you can kind of look at it from that. I know it's a lot, I know. But Kendra's going to talk about too, you want to make sure that you've got some dream schools, some schools you can get into, and then some schools that might fight over you, because we've had kids get some unbelievable financial packages based on their academic transcripts at schools where they didn't think they would have gone initially, but boy, it's hard to turn down that money. So we really try to encourage every kid to have a variety of schools that they're going to, and then have a state school to back up. You don't have to do the ACT for the state schools.
And I wouldn't wait to take any tests, because these are the offerings. So if you miss these boats, there's no other boats
You miss
to
the
launch.
application deadline.
So you
Yeah.
want to make sure you have as many opportunities to test as makes sense for your child. But again, 2 to 3 times. let's not make our children take the test 4 to 5 times. That would be insane. You know, like one Saturday and how they do on a test on one Saturday is not going to determine the rest of their life and their future plans.
And there's tremendous data and research on the growth of a kid taking it once the first time and then taking the second time, boy or girl.
It's about a 200-point increase
Yeah.
between the first
If they
and
do
second
any
test.
sort of preparation program at all.
Yep.
But then after that, it
It
flattens
kind of
out. There's no
flattens out,
improvement
right.
after the second
Right.
test. So just so you're aware of that.
So don't you, right, are they gonna go through that software program, where they teach those schools?
Naviance?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you talking about now?
Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I'm gifted at charades also. So we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
She's going to cover all that.
Okay.
yes.
Can you speak a little bit about the test optional schools? What's the
Yeah.
percentage of schools that are test optional now?
So there's a growing movement, and I was definitely going to speak about that, so thank you for asking this question. So there is a growing movement amongst colleges that are really stepping away from the testing-heavy application model. I think schools are finally realizing that it's more important and more beneficial for their colleges to look holistically at your child. Let's look at the transcript. Let's look at the rigor of the classes they've taken and how they've done. Let's look at their extracurriculars, their community service, their essay, you know, what the teachers and counselors have to say about them. Again, one singular Saturday and a student's performance on one singular Saturday really doesn't make a great deal of sense to you know, hitch that wagon to that star for the colleges anymore, because sometimes they're finding, okay, this kid did great on the SATs, but they come to campus and they're all over the place. So sometimes, really there's a growing movement of schools that are just saying, we're test optional. If you want to send test scores to us, we'll consider them. But if you don't want to send test scores to us, we're not going to penalize you. And if you go to this website, it's called fairtest.org, FAIRTEST.org, that will give you the most up-to-date list of schools that are test optional. So you can start to look at those schools for your child. If your child's not a great tester and you feel like they're going to be limited by those options if they have to submit scores, that's a great place to start. And we talk with your students a lot about that as well. Does that help?
It does. When should you withhold scores and when should you send them? I think that's such a gray area.
I think that's a case-by-case situation. I would hate to say, like, in this like, there's no blanket answer really to that. It comes down to the child, their profile, the school's kind of typical academic profile, and if it would be beneficial or not. But it's a case-by-case basis, and that's what your counselor can help to do.
And if you go visit the college and you do a tour, that's a great question to ask. To be quite honest, you know, my test score is this, should I submit it or not? And that's a great question to ask them.
And again, just to those test optional schools, if they require it, you have to submit no matter how you've done it. That's part of the application process. Okay?
What was that website?
Yep, fairtest.org. Fairtest.org. All test optional schools as of now. So the students, after they take the SATs or the ACTs, the other kind of further down the line responsibility of theirs is to send the SAT scores to the colleges of their choice. We don't have access to their scores. We get a copy, like a master list of everyone's SAT scores, but we don't have the individual score reports for every child. It's the student's responsibility, once they've decided where they're applying, to send their SAT scores or ACT scores electronically to all of those colleges. Of course, there's a fee, because nothing with College Board is free. Last year it was about $13 per school. So just keep that in mind as well, and make sure, we're going to tell your students this as well, but make sure that they're sending off the scores in an appropriate amount of time so that the schools aren't waiting too long for those testing scores. Yes?
The turnaround time for the scores, like,
Yep.
you know, your October 7th test date score before you have to register for, say, the December test?
Yeah, so the turnaround for the test is approximately 3.5 weeks or so. They're going to get that electronic score back to your student. So you might have already have had to register for that next test to kind of make the deadline, but you will know in about 3 weeks or so. That's typical of the timeline.
If they're doing the common application, it's still individual, so
Yes, exactly. The College Board, the SAT piece, it doesn't matter if you're doing Common App or specific applications, you're going to need to go in and put every school in to College Board and send the scores individually to every school. Yes?
How do you know when to do that? Like, when's the time frame for that?
So it really depends on the deadline, the earliest deadline, and the deadlines of that college. So, for example, sometimes kids' parents will say, oh my gosh, I'm taking the October 7th SAT, I'm applying November 1, that's my deadline, what do I do? In that instance, you're going to send the score because you have to send the score, and even if it comes a day or two or a week beyond November 1st, the college is not going to penalize your child for that because they know that the holdup is the College Board's 3.5-week turnaround or so. So as long as the scores are kind of in process, there's no real penalty. Of course, if it was November 1 and by November 30th they still haven't received the child's scores, that's an issue. But a few days, a week, because of College Board, they understand. That's okay. Yep. So you can cherry pick which scores you want to be sent. So if you did amazingly in June and kind of horribly in October, which probably wouldn't happen, might be the reverse actually that happens, you can decide, I only want to send my June test date, or I only want to send my October test date. It's whatever your child kind of feels would be to their best advantage.
I thought when I told you math, Stanford, they said they would take the best score on the math section and the best score.
Yep.
on the English section.
And that's the other piece of the puzzle. So if you send everything, the college will cherry pick the scores. So it's really, the cherry pick, the scores, the best scores will get to the school. Either if your child sends them or the college picks them. So that kind of covers the testing component of things, unless there's any other questions. Okay, so hopefully your kids are signing up as we speak. So in the meantime, while they're kind of working on Khan Academy, they've signed up for the SATs, they're kind of getting ready for that test, there's a lot of things that they need to be doing in Naviance. And we talked to your students about this in June. And so when I polled the audience yesterday, I was thrilled with how many kids had already done so many of these tasks. I was really, really proud. I feel like this has been a senior class that's already kind of beaten the record for being most involved with the college process. So they're doing a great job. So the first thing is to research colleges and to create a final list. So hopefully over the past few months, they've been touring colleges. They've been going on to Naviance's SuperMatch, trying to figure out lists of schools and school names that kind of might fit with what their hopes and dreams are. Did any of you go on college tours over the summer with your kids? A few of you? Okay. So if you didn't go on college tours over the summer, that's okay, but it probably is time to get going on visiting. The college tours and those information sessions are very, very critical. Students are going to have to choose, with your help, where they're going to be for 4 years. And you don't want them to make a decision based on, a website or a, description of a college in a book. They really need to go to that campus, get a sense of it, get a sense of the community there, of the students. They should sit in on a class and kind of get a sense of what those courses and teaching styles are kind of looking like. Go and look at the extracurriculars, go look at the music, the drama, the sports, whatever, the gym, the fitness center, the cafeteria, make sure the food's edible. There's a lot of different things that they're going to need to go and check out that you really can't get a full understanding of it unless you're there on campus. So we really have encouraged students to get out there and tour the schools. Sometimes kids apply to schools and then visit them after they've applied. There's nothing wrong with that, but you might save yourself some time and money if you visit beforehand and decide, you know what, that's really nothing that I'm interested in. I'm not going to apply there, okay? So, and I'll talk about SuperMatch and kind of how that can be used on a different slide. But there's another way to do some great research on a college that they don't have to leave Fiskdale for, and that is the college representative visits here at TRHS. So we have the most we've had in a very long time because we just automated our rep visit scheduling system, and we have about 80 schools coming to visit us here at Tantascwa. So what happens is in Naviance, a college representative has booked a visit here. Let's say it's on September 22nd, 9 to 10. Your student is going to be able to go into Naviance and see the entire list of all the schools that are coming and when they're coming, and sign up for those visits right in Naviance. And with the permission of their teacher, they can come down to the visit, and there they'll get to sit in guidance with a handful of other kids who are interested in also that school and talk to that representative. Now, the benefit of this, and what I told your students yesterday, was that getting yourself in front of this admission rep is critical, because they're not sending just anybody to Tantascwa. They are sending the person who is reading the applications for our school and deciding what kids get in and what kids don't. So this is the person with the power, the decision-making power coming to our school. And I told them this story. I had a student last year. He decided that this one particular school was the dream school. This is where he wanted to go. He fell in love with it. You couldn't convince him otherwise. This was where he was going. Unfortunately for him, the target profile of the school was about here and he was about here, okay? It was a little bit of a long shot for him. However, he went to this rep visit. He connected with this rep. They had a glorious little conversation. They started emailing back and forth. They were emailing all fall. And finally, the boy gets in. And, you know, she emails him, they formed a beautiful little relationship. This rep is thrilled that he's joining their college. And I have to say that I think a lot of it, he's a wonderful, amazing kid, and she was able to see that when she met with him, talked with him, saw his passion, even if his grades and his test scores didn't make him jump off the page, that conversation and getting to know him personally made all the difference. And so I really encourage your children to get in front of these reps and have these conversations with them. Because if they can be looking through the applications in a few months and see your child's name, know their face, know something amazing about them, that can only help, right? Yes?
So you're saying the rep that comes here is going to be the decision maker?
Yes. Most often, unless there's a scheduling conflict, yeah, they're going to send the people here who are reading for this school. Correct. So it's just, it's a no-brainer for me. If I was a student, I'd be down at every single school that I was interested in applying to.
And a lot of the private colleges, the admissions programs will give you kind of points.
Yes.
If you do the tour, if you do the admissions interview,
Yep.
how many times you visit to open houses. So you want to get, if your kid really loves a couple of schools, you want to make sure you take the time to go to those, if that's something you're reaching for as a family, because that does make a difference. And because the college is kind of like getting that yes or no from on the first date, if you want to ask somebody out. The college does not want to accept your child and get rejected. So they want to have as many yeses as possible from who they decide to take, because that gives them a ranking uptick, and there's all kinds of formulas that go into this. But they want to know that the kids they're admitting are going to have a really good chance of saying yes.
It's called demonstrated interest.
Yeah.
So every time your child calls an admission office, that's tracked. Every time they go to a campus tour or an information session or a college fair, write their name down on the clipboard of the table. Every time they meet with one of our reps, those things count towards demonstrated interest, and that definitely does play a part in the admissions decisions, because as he said, nobody wants to be rejected. So they're trying to get a sense of who's really interested in this school and who's really passionate and who's going to say yes if we offer the acceptance. Okay. So again, college rep visits, they're all in Naviance. Your students can sign up today for as many as they want. The next thing that they need to work on is the letters of recommendation. So we have so many wonderful teachers here, teachers who have impacted them, I'm certain, all the way back from 9th grade until last year and going into this year. We told them back in June that they needed to ask 2 teachers prior to leaving for the summer. The reason is because, teachers can only write so many letters in the year. And at some point, they may say, I've hit my limit, I can't write any more letters, I'm sorry, I love you, but you're number 35 and I can only write 34 letters this year. So we urged them all to ask their teachers last year before the summer came. Some kids did, and that's awesome. Some kids kind of hadn't done that quite yet. So we encouraged them yesterday to get out there and talk with their teachers and figure out who they wanted to ask. Now, what I suggested to them was that they should ask teachers in junior year. That's typically a good year to kind of pull from. 9th grade most teachers are not remembering clearly 3 years ago unless there was some amazing relationship or it was some transformative experience that happened in 9th grade for that child, that teacher. So junior year is kind of a nice place to pull from teachers who you've had perhaps more than once, because they'll really get to know you and be able to see your growth. They should think about teachers who relate to the content area that they're planning to go into. So if they're thinking of going into nursing, you would have them ask a science and a math teacher, because that's what the nursing programs are going to require. If it was an art teacher, you're going to have an art teacher, and so on. So we really encourage them to think about who they've connected with, who knows them really well, and ask that person. So once that teacher has said yes, now the student has a job to do. This job is completing the teacher recommendation surveys. So what we do for the teachers is we've created a little survey in Naviance that just kind of has the student answer a few good questions. You know, what did you learn most in my class? What was your biggest challenge in my class? How did you overcome it? Just a little bit more about them and their experience in that class and kind of why they asked this teacher to write about them. So once your student gets a yes from 2 teachers, they need to then go into Naviance and complete that survey for each of the teachers, 1 for each. And once that's submitted to the teacher, then they can begin to work on the letter of recommendation and have it ready for the deadline of the student. Okay. There's also surveys for us as guidance counselors. So we have the luxury of knowing your students for 3 years, which is great. We start working with them in 10th grade, 11th and 12th. But there's still sometimes things that we want to know more about to really write an effective letter. So we ask them to do 3 surveys. One is actually for you. So the first is an autobiography survey. This is long. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of thought. We ask a lot of tough questions that they really need to share about themselves so we can really write a great letter. We also ask for an activity resume. What have you done here? Sports, community service. Are you a Boy Scout? Are you a Girl Scout? Are you 4-H? Do you go to church? Do you do mission work? What do you do? Anything and everything. It doesn't have to be just here at school. It can be anywhere out in the world. Do you work a job? We want to know what your child has spent their time doing throughout the 4 years here.
Isn't that something they're already recording or could be recording in Naviance?
I'm hoping so. We've encouraged them to start their activity resume in 9th grade and keep track of it for all 4 years, so they don't forget anything.
If they do it there, you could just pull it up from there?
Yes, so they're going to do it all in Naviance, and then we just pop into Naviance and we can see everything they've written. Exactly. So it's all electronic now, which is great. So they can just type away. The last one is the parent-guardian survey. We ask you to talk about your child. What makes your child so special? What's something I don't know about your child that I might never know unless you told me? I've had some amazing things come through for kids, and they're like, oh, I didn't even think to tell you about that. And it's something totally amazing and wonderful that I'm thrilled to put in their letter of recommendation. So that's why we ask you, because you know them best. And you might be able to point us in a direction of something really special and unique that they've done that we can highlight in their letter of recommendation. Now, just a note about the teacher letters and the counselor letters. The teacher letter of recommendation really is focused on the content and the academic component of their experience. They're not going to talk about the personal life of a child. They're not really going to talk about extracurriculars. They're going to talk about what did they do in the classroom? Were they participatory? Were they on time with work? Were they insightful? How was their writing? What did they do when they faced an academic challenge? They're going to be kind of focused on that academic kind of, persona of your child. The guidance counselor letter is really very holistic. We talk about the personal life. We talk about the extracurriculars. We talk about the academic. And we also highlight any struggles that they may have had that could have impacted their academic experience here. And so with your child's permission, and we always work with your child to figure out what their comfort level is in terms of disclosure to a college. But if your child, let's say, had a really tough sophomore year because they had some deaths in the family or there were some mental health concerns, we will write about that with your child's permission and provide context to that transcript, because that is really important for the colleges. If they know, here's all the things that were going on for this kid, this is why this didn't go so well, or this is why this class was a struggle, that can be very, very important and helpful, and students will be accepted in light of those little bumps in the road. If we don't tell colleges a thing, colleges assume the worst, and they might not want to take a chance on your child if they have kind of a spotty academic record. So again, the counselor letter can do a lot of real good there, and we're happy to kind of work with your child, figure out their comfort level, and disclose what needs to be disclosed to help put their academic transcript in perspective. Okay. Are there any questions about the letters of recommendation?
The parent guardian survey, that's really just for you guys.
Yes, it only goes to us.
So if we report something that's not terribly articulate, but
Oh, gosh.
no one else is going to see.
No one sees it but us, so you could just give me bullet points. Exactly.
We're not going to ding the kid.
I'm not going to email you back and say, okay, so your thesis needs words. No, you are good, you are just fine. All that I will do is look at it.
It's really just you guys.
Exactly. And that's all the surveys. So the teacher surveys only go to the teachers, the colleges will never see those. And all the autobiography, the activity resume, the parent guardian, that just goes to us. No one else will see it. It's just for us to help craft our letters. Okay, but that was a good question. Any other questions on the letters of recommendation? Okay. The last thing is matching your Naviance account with your Common Application account. So we talked about the Common App. There's those 500 colleges that use the Common App. If your child's going to apply via the Common App, those systems need to talk to each other. So we send everything through Naviance, but they're going to do a lot of their work in the Common App account online. Everything's electronic these days. So one thing that they have to do is we have to get these accounts to talk to each other. And we're going to talk to your kids in nuts and bolts in front of a computer, or I'm going to have my kids all get in a lab tomorrow, and we're going to show them how to do it. It takes about 2 seconds. They have to just create their Common App account first, and then it takes about 2 seconds to link it with Naviance. But that's another thing that they should be doing in the meantime. So if your student hasn't created a Common App account, that's something that they could definitely be working on right now, because we'll help them link them up, but if they don't have an account, there's nothing to link quite yet. Okay? And I'll show you a slide on what that looks like.
So do all schools take the Common App, or is that
Nope.
kind of, do they look at it as like putting a generic resume out there and sending it to a ton of companies, that you're not focusing
Yep.
on school, you're just sending this out?
That's a good question. So most schools are, as I said, there's about 500 schools that use the Common App. So I would say the majority of schools are using it these days, or the majority of schools that our kids are applying to. One exception are the state universities, however. So Worcester State, Westfield State, Fitchburg, those state universities, they do not use the Common App, with the exception of Framingham State. They just kind of got on board. But all the UMasses, those are all on the Common App. So most kids are going to have a school or two that are on the Common App. They're also going to have some that still require that specific college application. Now, I have heard from some schools that say, if you really want to get into our school, we want you to do our specific college application as opposed to the Common App. Because that shows us that you're, like you said, not just sending kind of a blanket resume out to everybody. You really want to come to us, and that's why you're willing to do our specific college application. That kind of information is really only gleaned by asking an admission rep, honestly. They're not going to post that anywhere on the website. They're not going to, advertise that. That sometimes is like the conversation and the informal question of a rep, like, hey, which application do you prefer? And they'll tell you. They'll let you know.
So you save it as a PDF and then you attach it when you apply to that college?
So the Common App is all electronic. There's no PDFs that are created. It's all you're typing in forms throughout the application. All right, so these are the things, as I said, that your children should be working on in Naviance. So here's some slides that kind of show you what I'm talking about. So when I say use SuperMatch, this is what I'm talking about. In Family Connection in your child's Naviance account, under the Colleges tab, there's a link that says SuperMatch, and this is what will get pulled up. Now, it's a little hard, I know it's yellow and a little bit tricky to see, but SuperMatch is a really phenomenal tool. If your child has no idea where to start, like where do I even begin? There's thousands of colleges, I don't know. This is a great place to begin because you can put in search criteria over here and it will spit out the list of schools that match that search criteria. So for example, you could say location. I only want to be in Massachusetts and Maryland. Those are my only states that begin with MA. That's it. So it's only where I'm going. Great, fine, plug that in. You could also say majors. I want a school that has interior design. Perfect. You could then say, I want a school that is 25,000 kids or more. You can decide by size. Or you could say, I want a school that's less than 1,000 or less than 2,500. You could then say, I want a public or private school. You could say, I want a school in the city as opposed to a school in the country. Those are the types of criteria you can put in. And then once you put in all that criteria, click submit, it will, as I said, spit out that list of schools that are a match for what your child feels that they want. And this is a great place to start. Then every college that pops up, you can click on that link. It gives you a little snapshot of their profile, how many kids they accept, how many kids they deny, what are the average SAT scores, average GPA, here's all the majors, here's a little bit about the school. It links you to their website, so you can then go look at the school online, kind of get a sense of things. You can even hook up with the campus tours. You know, it's all kind of right there once you have that list that gets spit out. The other nice thing that you can do is you can pin schools. So it's kind of like saving. So if you pin a school, then you have this kind of list you're coming back to of schools that you feel like you're interested in. And there's another great feature where you can compare schools. So you could say, okay, I want to compare Champlain College and Bennington College. And it will show you side by side the profiles of both schools, so you can really get a sense of how they're different and how they're the same. So this is a really nice tool. We encourage all of your students to start using it. They should have hopefully been using it in the spring of last year and over the summer here. But again, you can get matched, pin your favorites, compare schools, and save. Okay, so you can really do a whole bunch in here. There's a lot of other ways too, though, that you could do some college research. We're a great resource. There's view books and handbooks in the guidance office for people who like paper, kind of old school instead of the electronic everything. Libraries have a bunch of great information. The websites of the colleges are flashy and glossy and pretty. They want you to come look at them. They want you to think their school's the most beautiful school that ever was. So that's a great place to start as well. There's local college fairs. I sent out the summer letter over the summer, and it has a list of 5 local NACAC college fairs in the area. And this letter is online on the guidance website if you didn't access it quite yet. And it has a list of all the local fairs that are coming up. That's a great way to see 150 schools at a shot. You know, you can talk to the reps and kind of get a good sense of things. There's also, as I said, visiting with the reps here at Tantascwa, and there's so many search engines. College Board has kind of a SuperMatch type search engine. You know, there's a billion things out there trying to get schools, you know, trying to get you to look at schools. But I would say Naviance, College Board, and these resources here would be the ones I would recommend. The other thing to think about, as Mr. Lucas mentioned, are interviews. So again, getting yourself in front of an admission rep can often be the difference sometimes between an acceptance and a denial if you're kind of on the edge, or if you're really passionate about that school and you're a little, you know, that's where you want to go. So you can go to a campus tour, attend information sessions, schedule interviews with them on campus. That's another great way to get your child in front of an admission rep and really get to talk about and highlight their strengths and why they'd be a good fit at that school. So those are also things that your student can do. And I have a little interview prep list that I give to kids sometimes, like here's the questions they might ask you, here's the questions you should ask, so we can help kind of prepare them for that interview, because it is kind of nerve-wracking for the kids, but they always do a nice job. So as I said before, the Naviance college visits, under colleges again, you're going to see right over here, upcoming college visits. It's going to have the details, all the college visits that show up. You can see SuperMatches here, College Compare, College Lookup, College Search, everything they're going to need to try and start to put together that list of colleges that they might want to apply to, as well as how to really get in front of those representatives.
In addition to doing, isn't there like a night coming up in the next couple of weeks where we've got some reps here?
Yep, and I'll talk about that, absolutely.
So is this in addition to that night?
Yep.
Good.
Yep, absolutely. And I'll talk about that at the end, absolutely. So here's requesting a teacher recommendation. This shifted a little bit, but here again under colleges, teacher recommendations, they're just picking their teacher from the drop-down, sending submit, the teacher gets then access to their surveys and they can jump right in. So it's all electronic, it's all in Naviance. Everything we're asking your child to do is really in Naviance, okay? And then the surveys are under About Me. Over here, surveys to take, they're all listed right here. Your child can click on them, they can work on them, you can save and come back, so you don't have to get it all done in one sitting. This is where you'll go for your parent guardian survey. Your child has to kind of log into their account, get you in front of the computer, and you can type away. Okay? So as I talked about before, the common application, there's a few other little steps in the common application that you have to get through before you can match up the common app and Naviance together. So the first thing that you have to do after you make your common application account is to sign something called the FERPA waiver agreement. Now, FERPA stands for the Federal Family Education Rights Privacy Act. And this is basically saying that your student has the right to decide who has access to their educational records. The question that they're going to be asked in the FERPA waiver is, do you waive your right or do you not waive your right to see what was submitted on your behalf during the college application process? So namely, the letters of recommendation, okay? Now, colleges encourage students to waive their right. And the reason is this: they really want the knowledge that we as teachers and counselors were able to write freely, honestly about your child and are not inhibited in any way, knowing that the child is going to see that letter of recommendation after they leave us and go off to college, because those records are on, those letters will be on file at the college, and they could walk down to the registrar and ask to see them if they have not signed the FERPA waiver. So the colleges really like the idea that we're not inhibited and encumbered by that possibility that the child would see the letters later on down the line. Now, kids sometimes get a little nervous about that. Well, oh my gosh, well, like, you know, what are they going to write? I always remind them, teachers who have said yes, they're going to write a letter for you, are never going to write something bad. They wouldn't say yes, right? They wouldn't say yes if they had nothing good to say about your child. And with us, we're all bleeding hearts in guidance. We are never going to try to blackball a student or say anything negative. Our goal is to really put as lovely a spin on your child as we possibly can, while being, of course, honest and accurate. But there's really nothing for them to worry about in terms of waiving the FERPA. It is your child's choice, however, at the end of the day. If they don't want to waive that right, they don't have to waive that right. No one's going to make them do it either way. But just be aware that the colleges do prefer that they sign the FERPA waiver so that they cannot see their letters of recommendation later on down the line, okay? So after they create the common application account, and after they either sign to waive or not waive for the FERPA, then they can match their Naviance with their common application account. And I'm going to show your kiddos tomorrow kind of how to do this. But this is really important that your students understand. If they don't do the FERPA waiver, answer either yes or no, then we can't link anything with Naviance. FERPA has to happen because we have to get approval from your student to send documents to colleges. And if we don't have anything signed, if FERPA isn't signed, we're at a standstill and nothing can be submitted to the colleges of your child's choice, okay? Any questions on this?
So you want to answer yes?
That's what colleges encourage. That's what colleges encourage, yes. And so here's the Common App matching. As I told you, it takes about 1 second. So once the student has created the Common App account, signed the FERPA waiver, they're going to go into Naviance under colleges. This is going to pop up first thing. They put in the email they used for their Common App account. Their birth date is already preloaded in there. And then they hit match. That's it. Done. They're matched. We can talk, we can send. All is well. Okay? So, we've talked about how to research schools. We've talked about SuperMatch, those college visits, the interviews, the tours. There's a lot of things you can do to try to figure out, where am I applying? Once you've researched and pinned schools, you can put them in this little kind of list called colleges I'm thinking about. That is kind of the draft list. That's where you're thinking like, okay, here's like 15 schools that I'm considering. Got to do a little more research, but these are the ones I want to really have in my mind and start to do some targeted research on to figure out, are they a good fit for me or not? After they've done the research and added those schools to colleges I'm thinking about, then they're going to be able to move some from the colleges I'm thinking about list to the final list, colleges I'm applying to. This list has to be accurate because this is what teachers and counselors use to submit materials. If you're in love with, UMass Amherst and it's not on your colleges I'm applying to list, I can't send anything for you to that school. So it really does need to be accurate, and you need to have this be the final list. So while you're playing around researching, it really should stay in the colleges I'm thinking about list, and you're only moving them into the colleges I'm applying to list when you're definite. You know you're going to apply to that college. Okay. Application. But Common App or no Common App, they're all going to show up on that colleges I'm applying to list. Because the way we submit documents is all through Naviance. It's either going to the Common App or it's going to the specific college, but it's all done through Naviance. So it doesn't matter how they're applying to the colleges, they all have to be on the list. Okay? So the college list, Mr. Lucas kind of referenced this as well. Like, what does this list look like? How many should I be thinking about? 8 to 10 is a safe target. I've seen kids, though, have 4 schools and be fine with that, and families be fine with that. If it's a solid list that makes sense, 4 is okay. 8 to 10 is typically what we recommend. I think anything more than 10 gets overwhelming for the student. Things get lost in translation because there's so many different things that each of the colleges need. It gets quite expensive. It costs about $80 to $120 per school application. And then you're thinking about the SAT scores in addition to that. There's money that adds up. So you don't want to have 20 schools. That could be thousands of dollars to apply, and that would not be reasonable. But 8 to 10 schools is what you're thinking about. You want some reach schools. So by that I mean schools that, here's their typical profile of a child. So these test scores are here, GPA is up here, they're kind of an outstanding character. Your kiddo might be here. It's a reach. They're not matching that profile. Every kid should have a reach school on their list, or maybe 2. I think it's important. If you find a school that you really feel passionate about, maybe the stars are going to align for you, and maybe you're going to get into that reach school. Like that has happened, like for my friend who I spoke about earlier. That was a reach school for him, but he got in. So it's always nice to have some of those schools on your list. You also want mainly possible and target schools. This is the profile of the typical child who goes there. This is your student. Kind of right on track. Nothing too much, nothing too little, just this, they're equally matched. And then you do want some safety schools on your list. I have students who say, oh, I don't want to go to that school. That school, I could just get into that school, no problem. That's, not a name on a bumper sticker on my car. You're missing out if you don't apply to some safety schools. We've had students apply to safety schools and get phenomenal financial aid packages. Because remember, the schools are running a business. And if they can get your high-achieving child who's above their profile for their typical student, that increases their data, increases their numbers, they look better as a school, and they're going to want to attract your child there by giving them money, scholarships, grants, whatever. So I never want kids to kind of get into that bumper sticker game, and that's what I call it. Sometimes, oh, that school's not good enough to be seen on my car. It is if it's free, right? It is if it's free. So put it on your car and drive off and have no debt. That's a wonderful thing. Of course we do. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I know. No, you guys can't say it, but I'll say it. I'll definitely say it. And the other thing that I said to your students is they really need to have a public school on their list. Every kid should have a public school on their list. I mean a Worcester State, a Westfield State, a UMass. UConn is a public out-of-state school, so it's kind of like mid-range for financial options. But they need to have those schools on the list, because I can't tell you how many kids get into the private school of their dreams, and they get the price tag, and they collapse in a ball because mom and dad can't pay 72 grand to go there. That happens all the time. And so they need to have financial options on the table. You need to have schools that are going to be $23,000, $24,000. That still is insane to me, right? But it's not $72,000, okay? So you want your child to have public schools on their list as well. Private schools are just not financially workable for many, many families. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. I don't know what I'm going to be paying when they get to be 18. Platelets, like blood, I don't know. My kidney, I don't know. So options are good. Yes.
I heard a commercial the other night that said something about you could go to University of Maine for the same place as a Massachusetts state
Yeah.
school. How do you find out about like deals like that?
Yes. So there's a wonderful program in New England called Tuition Break. And if you all write that down, you can go and look it up. So Tuition Break offers in-state tuition to our kids at all the other New England states if we don't offer our major at one of our public schools. So like if we didn't offer interior design, let's say at one of our colleges, and they offered it at University of Maine, they could go to University of Maine and pay in-state Maine prices. They wouldn't have to pay out-of-state Maine prices.
At other New England schools?
Yeah, it's within New England. And it's great that there's not a ton, but there's a handful of options there. So if your child has kind of a niche major, there might be something there where you're saving some money and having some more choices. It's a great question.
What's it called again?
Tuition Break. Tuition Break. Yep, just search for Tuition Break and you should find it.
So it's a really small amount.
I mean, the last time I looked, it was 3 full pages of a little pamphlet. I haven't gotten this year's crop. They always send me like the most up-to-date one for every year. I haven't received it yet. But, you know, there's a handful. I'd say 25, 30 school majors that you could access.
In terms of evaluating what to reach, what's possible target, look at GPA, and then there's confusion around weighted versus unweighted GPA. How do you, like if you look at a school and says, we like a GPA of 3 or
Yeah.
whatever, and then it's usually unweighted, and that's what's weighted, how do you compare that?
So actually, the colleges typically are weighting their GPAs. We have the same weighting scale as all the public universities on purpose. So Westfield State, Worcester State, UMass Amherst, they all use a weighted 4.0 GPA. So we have that on purpose to seamlessly make it understandable when you're trying to compare GPAs with our in-state universities. The other thing you have to understand about GPAs is that colleges are going to dismantle your child's transcript and put it back together whatever way they want. So they're going to, let's say your child is trying to get into nursing school, for example. They're going to take your child's transcript and they're going to say, okay, we don't care about these English courses. We're not going to consider those. We're just going to take the science and the math. And they're going to calculate a GPA based on maybe just the science and math classes your child has taken. And that's going to be what they use to decide are they getting in or not. And that's how they're going to compare your child to somebody else who's coming in from a totally different weighted school system. So that's what they do to make all the children kind of equivalent in their eyes. They're converting it to their credit system. And again, that's going to depend on every school. Like they all do it differently. Majors are all different. So what your child can know though is that we're sending a GPA that gives them a sense of how they performed amongst their peers. But that is only going to go so far, and then the college is going to take it apart and put it back together the way they want to compare it to everybody else outside of Tantascwa. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it seems that a lot of the private schools, they can look them up, there's ways to find out what their GPA is.
Yep, absolutely there is. Yep.
Can you look at what our children have for a GPA here compared
Yep.
to that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is.
Yeah, I would say most schools in the area are on a weighted 4.0, just like us. So, we're not atypical. I've seen some kind of bizarre weightings from when kids transfer in from other states, but, in this kind of area, it's a weighted 4.0 is pretty much standard. So, The colleges are going to look at that GPA and they're going to use it. They're going to take it into consideration because it provides them context with how your child did amongst the 287 other kids in the class. But, they're going to recalculate it too. Okay?
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. All right. So again, make the list a good list. And if I can encourage you to do anything, have the tough financial conversations with your child now. Tell them what you can afford. Tell them what you can't afford. Make that a factor in what goes on the list. Because if you allow them carte blanche to put every school they're in love with on the list, sometimes that cannot go well. I'll also tell you though that sometimes schools come back with amazing packages that make the cost of it equivalent to a public school, let's say, for a private school. Like if your child's amazing and they really want them, the cost could be about the same for a state school and a private school. So I'm not saying don't put anything on the list that is maybe a little bit more than you feel comfortable affording. Sometimes scholarships and grants and packages come back that make it workable. But I always get sad for families, for both the parents and the kids, when no conversations have happened before. And you have to have those tough conversations after the kid's gotten into the school. And they've fallen in love with it, they've gotten into the school, and then you have to tell them they can't go. So have that conversation ahead of time. It'll save everyone a little heartache. Yes? Yep, so we're going to be giving out the GPAs and class ranks to students tomorrow. At the small group meetings. My small group meetings are tomorrow, other counselors are going to be Friday, Monday, etc. But yep, they're getting them in the next few days. Yep. I don't know offhand, but I know in the next few days everyone's ramping up. So yep, they'll know them.
So you won't know, like, if someone gets accepted, if you get accepted to like a private school, you won't know what they're offering for financial aid or for scholarships until they get accepted?
Correct. The financial aid package comes back after you've completed the financial aid paperwork and after they've been accepted to the college.
Looking to see where, like, what's the average or if
Yes.
there's a chance of, like, based on, like, incomes?
Yes, so there's a really fabulous tool that every college is required to have on their website. It's called the Estimated Family Contribution, or the EFC. And it's an EFC calculator. They have this on every single college website. This was standardized by law a few years ago because they wanted families to have a good sense of what you really have to pay. So if you go onto the websites of all the colleges, you can search for the expected family contribution, and that will give you a sense of exactly how much aid money they've been giving out typically and how much most families are looking to pay.
And if, like, say you come from a divorced family, like private, like, my understanding is like public schools is just where the kids spend most of the time, and private is both the father and the mother's income, or is that?
It depends. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit more case by case than that blanket kind of statement. I don't want to talk too much about the financial aid piece because I'm not an expert on financial aid, but we do have a financial aid night in 2 weeks, and they would be able to answer all of those questions for you. Absolutely.
You've mentioned scholarships, but you haven't been very specific because schools don't offer the scholarships.
Sometimes
They offer packages of pricing and that type of scholarship. But there are millions of other scholarships out there. Some for just being left-handed, some for all kinds of things.
It's on one of my next slides. I'll talk about it. Absolutely. Any other questions about this piece, though? Yes.
So are we all done with letters of recommendation? Because I have a question.
You can go back to it.
Okay.
That's fine.
No, I just didn't know if you were going to talk more about it.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to talk more about it, but.
Okay. So do kids submit like personal letters of recommendation anymore? Does that not happen?
Personal meaning like people from the community? Or?
Yeah, like back in the day when I applied to college, or dating myself, you used to send like personal letters of recommendation from, if you worked for somebody or, something like that. They don't do that anymore?
Colleges are reading so many applications that they're limiting now how many letters of recommendation they're willing to look at. Some schools are saying one guidance counselor, one teacher. Some are saying one counselor, two teachers. Some are saying as many as you want to submit. And so in certain circumstances, your child could absolutely submit like a supervisor or an employer's letter if it relates to their major, if it has some kind of bearing on what they might do in college. But a lot of schools are just, they're running out of time to read these, 50,000 applications over a few months. And so they're trying to say, we can't read that many, just send us one. So, and if it's only one or two, it's usually teachers and counselors. That's a good thing. Okay. And so again, we can help your child determine, is this a reach school? Is this a safety? Is this a possible? That's something I do with every one of my kids when I meet with them and we review their list. I want to make sure they have a nice well-rounded mix of some of those schools. It's not all safeties, it's not all reaches. So that's a part of our process as counselors. So we will help your child do that. So as I talked about before, public and private, those public ones are supported by those tax dollars, they're less expensive. So here's, the schools that you're looking at, and then the private universities just have no public monies attached to them, and they're a bit more expensive. As I said before though, we've had kids get into private schools and pay less than the cost of a public school because it was, a safety for them. So don't rule out these wonderful, expensive schools because it could come back in a way that makes sense for your child age. So time to get organized. So your child, hopefully at this point, has signed up for the SATs. They're working on their essays and their supplements and their applications. They're getting their organization of their letters of recommendation put together. They're putting together their final list, researching colleges, coming up with where they're going to apply. They really then need to know, what does each school require? So once they have their final list, they need to know, what is each school requiring of me in my application? Every application is different. None are the same. They might require, again, Common App or non-Common App. They need to know what the deadline is. Is it November 1? Is it February 15th? That's going to be a world of difference for your child. So they need to know when those deadlines are so they don't miss them. And the colleges are not like, a kind biology teacher who you can turn in your homework the day late. At 12 o'clock on the day of the due date, that's it. If it's 12:01 and your child hits submit, they can't apply. They're not going to reach out to your child and make an exception for them. So please make sure your children understand the importance of the application deadlines. They have to get that stuff in on time. There's no second chance. Subject tests, do they need them? Should I sign up for the subject test? Do I need to make sure I'm taking those? The essay, what's the prompt? What am I writing about? Are there supplements as well? How many recommendation letters does this school need? Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? Are there any other school forms that they might need? So some students I've seen create these beautiful color-coded Excel spreadsheets and everything's in like a beautiful pattern and it's fabulous and they're super organized. Some kids have paper and pencil kind of organization. But I would encourage you to work with your child on figuring out a system that works for them. Because your counselors, we're not going to know every deadline for all 287 kids. It's really you and your child's responsibility to know when everything is due and what needs to be submitted.
Do you think you can get most of that information from the same website?
Yes. Usually at the top of you can click on typically a link that will say, the application for the 2017-18 school year, and at the top it usually breaks down, here's the things that we're going to need. So it usually is pretty clear and apparent on the website or on this application what they need. But also remember, some schools, like the nursing deadlines, are much earlier than the regular decision, just the regular college's deadline. So if there's a specific major, you might need to have an earlier deadline. You'll need to know what that is. So again, this is your child's responsibility, so impress upon them being informed. So now they know where they're applying, they know what their college requires of them. So now it's time to get going. They have to write their essays, they have to write the supplements, they have to complete the common application or specific college application. They have to submit those applications via mail or electronically. I don't know a lot of mail ones anymore. It's usually just clicking a button. Everything's automated now. And they need to send their SAT scores or their ACT scores as well. And that's done electronically as well. So this is all the stuff that then needs to kind of get happening once they know where they're applying. And there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle.
So you upload the SATs child's?
We have no control over the SATs. That is their responsibility. They have to go into the College Board account that they've created, put in the schools they're applying to, click send, pay the money, and it'll send the scores to the schools. We have nothing to do with that because we don't have access to their scores. Now, again, we are here to help your child. We will do as much as your child would like us to do in terms of helping them get organized, finding out their list, helping them figure out school suggestions. Is it reach? Is it possible? Is it safety? But the majority of the responsibility is with your child. They're going to be out of the nest soon, and everything's going to be their responsibility in a few months, as crazy as that seems. So this really is the time to let them take the reins and do this on their own. You're of course going to be there to help them, keep them organized, but I would discourage you from being the parents calling the admission office on behalf of your child. You remember how we talked about how they take kind of note of who's calling and who's doing what? If you're the mom or dad who's calling and not them, that's kind of like a demerit. You know, they don't want to think that you're going to be coming with them to college and being in their dorm room with them, walking them to class and doing their laundry. They want to know that this child is going to be independent and able to handle everything on their own. So please try to restrain yourselves when you want to just push them out of the way and do everything for them. Try to let them do it. This is their big job this year. So again, your child needs to be researching and visiting schools, finalizing their list, coordinating all those teacher recommendations, completing and submitting their applications, and sending their SAT scores. Okay? Also writing those essays as well. So financial aid, we touched on it a little bit, but again, I really love who comes to talk to us about financial aid, so I don't want to speak out of turn, but you can know a few things. FAFSA, you have to do this once for every child. You can start as of October 1st, so in 2 weeks, you can begin to work on the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid, FAFSA. If you go to a website and they try to charge you for the FAFSA, stop. It's free. Free is in the name, okay? Only go to FAFSA.gov. That is the website for FAFSA. You can apply for an FSA ID right now, and then as of October 1st, you can start using the IRS data retrieval tool. It'll pull from your tax returns. It'll pre-populate information for you in the FAFSA, and you can then work through it and complete it for the colleges. Some colleges also require the CSS profile. It's an additional financial aid form that they need to process your child's financial aid package. As I talked about deadlines, there's deadlines for the applications. There's deadlines for FAFSA and CSS for every school. So you don't want to miss a financial aid deadline because then you won't have access to the grants, the scholarships, and the money. Okay? There's also, as Mr. Bennett mentioned, what about all those scholarships out there? So we have national and regional scholarships that pop up all the time. So we get messages, we get letters, we get notified of scholarships that are available in the local area throughout the year. These scholarships are blasted out in an email in Naviance. So on your child's Naviance account, they get a little email, and it tells them here's the scholarship that's now available, and they're welcome to come down to the guidance office, grab the application, fill it out, and apply. They're always welcome to do that. The local scholarship process, if you've ever been to our class night ceremonies, if you have older children or people you know here, when we hand them the checks and they walk across the stage, that's a part of the local scholarship process. And that is a formal process that begins in February 2018. There's nothing in the local scholarship process that begins before that time. But, as I said, there's national and regional ones that come in all the time. Your child can also go onto the guidance website. There's links to a bunch of different websites that are reputable. Zinch.com, for example, is one. They have some good scholarships. The College Board website has some great scholarship searching tools. So your child can get out there and apply. But know that the national ones, they're competing against every kid in the country who applies. It's a little bit harder to get those. The regional ones, those are probably a little bit more possible for them. And the local ones, of course, are only open to our kids. So that's the best chance that they have of getting scholarships. Now, scholarships range from $250, some are about $2,500, $3,000. It's not going to make or break a college for you. You know, you shouldn't think like, oh, well, we can afford it if we get 20 grand worth of scholarship. It's probably not going to happen, unfortunately. But they might get enough for books. They might get enough for living expenses for a year. You know, those are definitely things to consider. But it's not going to be a big payday, unfortunately, for every child with scholarships. The financial aid night, this is the night I would love all of you to come. It's October 11th at 6. We have the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority. They come here, they send a rep, they talk all about the FAFSA. They talk about expected family contribution. They talk about how do you determine, you know, how much you're going to be paying, what does a plan and a package look like, what does the FAFSA process look like, what's the CSS profile. It's a really informative night. So I would encourage you all to come. It's a great resource. So your child now has seen this presentation, and we have told them that we're going to be having those small group meetings. That's kind of the first step. And then after our small group meetings, we then move to multiple individual meetings with each of your child. We're going to be working on their letter of recommendation, working on their list with them, helping them search for things, answering their questions. I have some kids who kind of did it on their own last year. And I have some kids who I saw every day, every morning, emailed every day, back and forth, trying to help them through. So whatever your kid needs, we're here for them in whatever capacity they need us. But your students should be working on these things, those surveys, those letter of recommendation requests, finalizing the college lists. Okay, there's a lot they can do before we start to meet with them. And we've told them that if they have a college due date before January 15th, they have to get everything to us by December 1. It's 3 months away. So they do have to get moving. We have, as I said, 287 seniors this year. You know, we have a lot of kids that we're each responsible for, so we want to make sure we're doing a nice job and we're given the time to do a nice job for them. Here's the other upcoming event that I would love everyone to come to, the College Admission Representative Panel. So this is in 2 Thursdays on the 28th at 6 p.m. This is my favorite night of the year because we have representatives from Westfield State, University of Connecticut, Smith College, and Clark University. They're all here talking about how does my child navigate this entire process from their perspective. Who knows it better than the people reading these applications in the thousands and deciding who gets in and who doesn't. This night is really informative. I'll be asking them all sorts of questions about academics, about financial aid, about early decision, early action, you know, extracurriculars. Everything that you might be thinking or wanting to know, I ask those folks. And they have great answers and they provide a lot of good information. This is one to drag your lovely children to. They should hear this stuff. We're telling them to come, but please bring them with you. Don't let them get out of it. They need to be here listening to the experts talk, okay? We also have a college essay writing workshop. The English and Guidance Department works together in tandem on Wednesday, October 4th for an hour in the library. Kids can come with 0 essay started or their complete essay done. Whatever stage they're in, we will help them either brainstorm ideas, we will peer edit and tweak their essay, we'll help them kind of finely tune things. We talk about, you know, what are they looking for in an essay as well. That's how we start the conversation. So this is a really great, you know, afternoon for your child to attend as well. And then the MEFA presentation, as I said, is on October 11th. So one last way to stay in touch with me, if you didn't get enough of me tonight, you can be in touch with me through the Remind. So we have just become tech savvy, and we have created a Remind app for the senior class. And I've already been doing it. I already have 100 signups since yesterday. So your kids have already signed up, which I'm really excited about. So I'm going to put on the Remind app college rep visits that are upcoming, ACT and SAT deadlines, scholarship information, you know, things that they're going to need to know throughout the college process. And so you're welcome to join this class too, this Remind class, if you would like to. You could do it right now with your phones, if you so chose. You would text 810-10 with the words join 2018 TRHS. And then you're part of our class, and you're going to get my Remind app reminders. I'm not going to inundate you because I don't have the time to remind every day, but when there's something critical, you'll know, okay? You can also download the app and join the class. And this is all in your students' packet, so all the directions are in your students' orange packet that they got yesterday. And like I said, I already have 100 kids signed up since yesterday, so that's awesome. So, we are here to help your child navigate this. We're here to help you navigate this. This can be overwhelming, but it should be exciting too. This is a really exciting moment in their lives. They get to pick kind of where their life heads, for the next 4 years, and we're thrilled to be a part of that journey with all of you. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us and ask for our guidance. We're here in any capacity you need us. Any last questions?